Hey team, this video and this page are meant to help you create your pitches. In other words, when we sit down at the table together and pass around ideas for different writing projects that we might want to work on during our time here as freelancers, what are we going to bring? So you spent a little time already crafting your bio as a writer. You're thinking about who you are and what you bring to the table as a unique person. I hope that there will be some crossover with that bio work and that self-reflective work, and then the ideas that you generate for your pitches. So the first place I want to begin is just with 3 categories of writing. Now, there are all kinds of types of writing and articles that exist out there in the landscape of journalism. So like I've said before, if we were working for one magazine, we might have like a pretty clear direction, but you guys are freelancers, which means that you're creating all kinds of different projects for different types of audiences and contexts, and you have different interests, and your work might appear in a place that is radically different than the person next to you. And so to facilitate that sort of wild west of writing teams, I thought that we should boil down writing projects to 3 major categories. The first category is mixed media review, or a critique. And so you might think of, what are my favorite or my least favorite? Films, books, podcasts, TV shows, advertisement, music, pieces of music videos, albums, video games, whatever it might be. Media is a really broad term. And if you're someone who likes to critique, break something down, either to praise it or to point out something that's problematic about it, that would be a great category for you to work within. All kinds of publications are looking for different critics to publish articles for their sources. I want you working, if you do choose to write a mixed media review, I want you working with a single piece of work, or you could do like a compare contrast, but try to keep it really tight. And the reason is that that's what publishers are looking for, is really focused writing. You want to brainstorm a list of titles or pieces that you might work with if you're thinking this is a good angle for you. And then ask yourself, do I have something fresh or unique to say? Do I have strong feelings about this? And there are some other videos on this page about, considering your self-engagement. Is this enough of a project to keep you motivated, keep you attached, keep you doing the work? Do you think others in our team will appreciate it? That's a good testing ground for whether or not it might reach a broader audience if you really were to pitch it to a publisher. One of the nice things about working with the mixed media review genre, or being a critic, is that it can be personal, but it's not as personal as telling, a part of your life story. You could infuse it with personal evidence, but again, it's something that it's a space where you can talk about something you enjoy without being fully vulnerable, if that's kind of what you're looking for. Here are some other options for you. So if you want to keep spinning off of the bio and really focus on some of your personal indulgences, things that are your special interests, then you could write a special interest piece or a feature. This is probably the most creative, outside of the box space in which a freelancer would write, because it could literally be an article about anything. And what makes it special interest, what makes it sort of stand out is from other pieces, is that special interest pieces tend to have the purpose of sharing personal wisdom or revelations. So it might be what feels like just an aimless exploration of fashion, or a nickname that you received when you were younger, or a food tradition, or a symbol in your culture. And it might feel informative and sort of just like, oh, this is interesting. But then by the end, the reader pulls away some kind of something profound, some revelation, some conclusion that we come to at the end. And these pieces are especially refreshing when they do kind of surprise us with the topic when it's something that we're not used to seeing very often in writing. For instance, I've seen pieces about the use of emojis in professional communication. That could be a special interest piece if you're super excited about emojis or something. I will admit, though, as the editor for Freelancers, that my favorite special interest pieces from the group of freelancers I worked with last quarter were those that dealt with culture or subculture subject matter. So culture being, what's your family history? What culture are you from? Are you a part of? Subculture could be you're a part of a group of individuals. Maybe it's like a sport that you're a part of, or a skater, or you're a cat owner, or you're a someone who loves office supplies. That can be its own subculture. It doesn't just have to be cultural identity. But I do find all of that to be really successful, not just as the editor, but watching how writers interacted with other writers. There's just something so alluring and appealing about reading about other people's experiences in life that either cause us to resonate and say, oh, me too, or whoa, that's not my life story. I want to know more about that. If you took on a special interest piece, I just want to keep kind of riffing on this. That might also be a space where you could do something experimental. So, big picture example would be, do you guys remember I think it was a documentary called Supersize Me, and this man supersized every fast food item for a year to see what would happen to his body. And that was I'm going to write about this interest that I have, and I'm going to do an experiment at the same time, and then journal about that experience and let that infuse this research. I've seen it with other things. Like, one of my favorite books is about free diving. So people who dive underwater without any gear and just their physical bodies. And this book is called Deep. And then for every chapter, it gives you a depth of the ocean, and it talks about this writer's story of following freedivers around the world, and then also what is at different levels in the ocean and what scientists know about those different levels. And then the author himself learns how to freedive and then tells that story within. That's a book length, but you could do something similar in an article if there's just something that you're passionate about that you'd love to spend some time on. And then the most kind of common writing that you're probably used to running into is argument. But for our purposes, for articles, for freelancers, for creating works that we would submit out to publishers, I just want to emphasize that we will facilitate a process of writing micro arguments, which means small arguments. So you might begin with an idea that's pretty big, but as the editor, I will give you advice to pare down, because in a small piece of writing, which ultimately, if you're writing 3 to 6 pages, that's a pretty small piece of writing when you consider that a lot of topics have multiple books written about them. So if we make the topic smaller, we can be more successful in that small space. And I think you'll find as we work on our own writing and as we review other writing, how this becomes true, that the more narrow we get, the more successful our writing can be. So if you choose argument, I'm going to refer to it as micro argument and encourage a lot of micro, shrinking. And another way that you might refer to this kind of writing would be an op-ed piece. So it's it's not a special interest where you explore something and then you end with kind of that wisdom or revelation or commentary, but it's more of I'd like to prove a point. I'd like to say something. I'd like to convince you of something, readers. And a specific point. The thing that we will push for here, and really across the board, if you think about all these different categories that I'm hashing out right now, is that you need to present or pitch here at Freelancers an argument that will stand out against the backdrop of mainstream arguments. So, we're a team that's trying to help each other be successful as writers, to be heard, to be seen in a world full of information. And if you just say the stuff that's already being said, that's important in our process to sort of work through those common ideas, those popular ideas. But if we just swim in that, then we're really not presenting to publishers anything worth publishing, because we're looking for something new, cutting edge, fresh, different. And that's why, just to circle back, it's a really good idea to, throughout this process of brainstorming, go back to your bio. Who are you? What can you say that no one else is saying? Or if it's similar to what someone else is saying, how can you say it differently? And pitch that and present to us how you can do it differently. And if you're stuck, pitch whatever you have to pitch, and then challenge us as your team to maybe make some suggestions for how you could freshen it up and make it more you and make it stand out against the backdrop of noise. If you feel limited in any way, the categories are meant to give you a small place to start. And some of us, our minds are wired where that's what we need. But some of us are wired, we need like an expanse of options, and that's what gets us really like kicked off. I'm going to list a few ideas, and if they resonate with you, jot that down. If you were going to write a letter to someone, who would it be and what would you say and why? Maybe it's a letter. I have a whole book where this author wrote letters to companies and celebrities. And so it was like, hey, Adele, I think you should have named this song this instead of that. This name is silly. And this one would have been better. Or, hey, Taco Bell, why did you change this menu item? And it's really lighthearted and intriguing. And that's a lighthearted example. But maybe use that letter writing as a prompt if you're stuck, if you're not having if you're running up against a wall. Reflect on your life as a student. You're like, maybe an argument, but I don't know what to argue about. Have you experienced something that you want to be heard about? How about an advice column? So in your life, do people call you and ask you for advice about stuff? Do you ever feel like you've given a good piece of advice, a good piece of wisdom that you want to share with the world? Could you develop a special interest piece around that? What about, you're like, I know I need to be motivated to write, but none of this has inspired me yet. What about just sitting down and writing a personal narrative of some kind? Like maybe even just doing a few more like self-help prompts and then building from there. So your bucket list, a big dream that you keep putting off, a fear that you want to face, some personal goal or a change that you wish you could make in your life. Could you spin any of that into a special interest piece? Or maybe it reminds you of a character you relate to in a piece of media, like a television show, and you want to write about why that character freed you. You could work that into a media review. You could say, I don't care if this series wasn't rated well on Rotten Tomatoes. That character changed my life because of this connection that I have with that character or that one scene. That could qualify as a media review that publishers might be intrigued by and want to publish. What about a tribute piece? So maybe you just really want to write a tribute about your grandpa. Somebody did that last quarter and it was really neat, but it was a special interest piece because they talked about how this affection that they have for their grandfather and the reasons why they have that affection causes them to think grander thoughts about the importance of the elderly in our lives and how to really cherish people while they're here, and that passing down of tradition and of personality and family values and whatnot, which is how sometimes it gets overlooked. A heritage or a culture dive. So maybe you're like, yeah, that sounds nice to write about your culture, but I don't know enough about my culture. That was something that I presented a lot last quarter with that group of freelancers, is that I have Danish family, and I won't go off too much about it, but I remember my grandma and my grandpa said that one of the hardest parts about coming to the United States was not being able to find pumpernickel bread. And I was in the a health food store, and at the top shelf I saw pumpernickel bread, and I stopped and I smiled to myself, and I thought of my grandparents who are no longer here, and I thought, I really need to preserve more of their traditions, and now I want to like culture dive and go learn about them. That could be a special interest piece. Or is there just some another way to think about special interest is if you were a journalist and you had a beat, what would your beat be? So maybe you're on the sports beat, or the architecture beat, or the medical beat, or the music beat, or the nature and sustainability beat, or the science beat. What is your beat? Reflect on that. And then your pitch needs to be more than just like, I'm going to write about music. What about music? Dig a little bit, internet surf, talk to people, make it small, make it specific, try to make it stand out. If you try and you fail, I won't say that, but that's how we get this ball rolling. We'll make things better together. Maybe I'm looking at previous examples just so you guys know. Maybe there's some kind of label that you want to talk about, some phrase or some word that is intriguing to you, something you've been called, something you call yourself. I don't know, some kind of phrase or title of something that you want to analyze with readers. Or maybe you want to dive in, like, for example, under the topic of nature or sustainability. Maybe you want to talk about, what does my trash say about me? What does our trash say about who we are? Or you're like, hey, I keep buying these, I got a Yeti right here. So I keep buying these Yeti products. What's the story of this whole Yeti company? Why are they so popular? Are they a good company? What's going on inside of them? Just look around you. Find inspiration in whatever you see, and really spend some time just coming up with ideas. We're best suited to make a good decision with writing when we have a lot of choices and we can eliminate and pare down to the one we want, instead of being in that situation where we just have a blank page and we have to get one idea onto it. So come up with bad ideas. Just throw it all out and we will trim together. And maybe lastly, think about what kind of tone do you want to write in? What kind of style? So do you want to try doing something funny, something satirical? Do you want it to be serious? Do you want it to be vulnerable? Do you want it to be logistical? Maybe you want to write some kind of important special interest how-to and then make an argument about why it's so important that people know how to do that thing. You decide. But I really hope that all of this lengthy video gives you guys the inspiration that you need, as if we were just hanging out together and I was encouraging and inspiring you to come up with ideas. Reach out if you need to. Put some ideas on the board, and if they don't feel quite right, like I've said multiple times, we will tweak them together. Lastly, whatever you put down, and this kind of is a little bit repetitive, but I want to say it this different way. Whatever you put down is not set in stone. It can evolve and shift and change. Writing is a process, even the brainstorming, even the choosing of topics. So don't fear the typing and the submitting and the publishing and the sharing in that way. If you need a little bit of encouragement, a little boost of confidence before you share with the whole group, reach out. I will try to provide that for you. And honestly, I totally mean this. There are some things that are easy for me to say throughout the quarter, but and some things that are harder. This is an easy one. I love this part. I can't wait to see what you guys will share. Every quarter is a brand new group of human beings with ideas that I've never seen, or ones that I've seen a lot, but I am still excited to keep seeing because it's important, good stuff that you have to say. I'm looking forward to getting to know you. I'm honored to get to work alongside you as you explore who you are as a writer, and as you strengthen who you are as a writer and that sense of writing self. And I will bring all of the energy that I have to that task to just really be an encourager for you guys. So go for it, and I will talk with you soon.